Hi, my name is Reagan. I'm joined by Patrick, Ashley, Giselle, Alira, and Saya, and this is our Constitution of Urbania.
So this is the flag of Urbania. Um, the moon in the middle helps signify the crescent shape of the island, and the flowing water in the center shows the ocean that it's in, that it's all water based, and the circle holding the moon together is to show the country unified and together. And the blue of the flag also shows that it's an island country. Okay, so this is the map of Urbania, the island country in the middle of the ocean. It is made up of 5 islands, and the center island is BRQZ Island, which holds a collective of the country's ethnicity. And there's a lot of tension on this island. It is made up of 20% Bobek, 15% Rondo, 7.5% Quelf, and 7.5% Zandu. And then the island to the top right of it is Bossingse Island, and it's home to the Bobek people, and it holds the remaining 20% of the people. The island below that is Radiator Springs Island, and it's the home island of the Rondo, and it holds the remaining 15% of their people. And then the island after that is Quahog Island, and it's the home island of the Quelf, and it holds the remaining 7.5% of their people. And then the final island is Zootopia Island, and it's the home island of the Zandu, and it holds the remaining 7.5% of their people. And together, it is the country of Urbania.
Okay, so this is just a bit of the ethnic breakdown that Patrick was talking about, just which ethnicities are located on which island, and in the next slide, I'll explain as to why they are this way. Okay, so moving on to the history of Urbania. So the history of Urbania is really complex, and since there are a lot of ethnic backgrounds, I'll start with their origins. So in the beginning, the 5 islands that make up what is now Urbania were all their own nations that were separated by each ethnicity. And since they're all located near each other, they had agreements with each other regarding peace and trade. So since each island had different resources, combining them all was beneficial for all of the islands. And unfortunately, however, the land on BRQZ soon became extremely desirable by the other 4 nations when people discovered a major gold deposit. Now, precious metals were the only thing that all of the 5 islands together lacked, and before this, they had to trade internationally with countries on the mainland, which was very expensive, and the countries were relatively poor because of that. So when this gold was found, BRQZ became very greedy and did not want to trade it with the other 4 nations. And so then these 4 islands came together in order to retrieve the gold, and this eventually led to war. And at the end of a devastating and 10-year-long conflict, all of the 5 islands were brought together by the UN in order to stop the fighting. And they decided on a peace treaty that made them into one unified country, which is now, of course, Urbania. And so combat also meant that all of these ethnicities became mixed. So as time went on and war continued, people were fighting between each nation, which eventually led to more people moving to each different island. And so that meant that the ethnicities became mixed. So the current major problem in Urbania is clashes between the ethnicities. So the 2 dominant are the Boic and the Rondo. They fight a lot between which laws would benefit them the most. And they also take advantage of the Quelf and the Zondu, who are the minorities that currently have no say in the government. So that is where we come in and how we are going to make our constitution.
As you can see on the slide, power dividing involves the separation of powers in order to create more balance between the minorities and the majorities. It also has a limited government to protect the rights of citizens. This leads us to the strengthening of a civil society to empower individuals. Power dividing favors presidentialism and generally promotes less ethnic violence because it reduces tensions between groups. On the other hand, power sharing has a grand coalition of governments where leaders of different social aspects and ideologies unite. This involves a minority veto where each segment is given a vote to ensure protection of interests. It leads us to proportional representation where the stance of all groups is proportionate to an agreement. Another characteristic of power sharing is segmental autonomy, which ensures that minorities have a say in the rules of their local region. Power sharing favors parliamentarism and generally provides political stability.
For the recommendations between presidentialism and parliamentarism, I would definitely go with the parliament form of government, with the president being elected directly by the people. The president also shows forms of authoritarianism, which means that the president could continue to veto bills that the legislator wants to ratify, which is basically essentially he gets to decide whether or not he wants to pass laws or bills or not. With the parliament form of government, the head of government isn't usually directly elected, so hasty decisions could be made to shift the power that wouldn't take place without an election. They also have great benefits. They're adaptable, accountable, and they have great distribution of power. And the parliament form of government is faster and easier to pass laws. With federalism and the unitary system, I would definitely go with the federal system. It disperses political power so that no single individual or group has excessive power. This system also gives an average citizen the opportunity to participate in government. Although this system they have policies that states might undermine policies of another, it's still a better form of government because with the unitary system, there's no defense systems in the government, and they're very, sometimes they lose sight of local issues, which I think could be a downside because there could cause riots and uprisings, which you don't want. With unicameralism and bicameralism, we decided bicameralism was best. There's a few differences between these. They're quite similar, but a bicameral system provides checks and balances, which protects any abuse of power, where the unicameral system does not. And then with the electoral system, based on plurality and the proportional representation, we went with proportional representation because it fits power sharing better. And with proportional representation, if no party wins over 50% of the vote, then a coalition government would be formed, where with plurality, a candidate must win more votes over another, even if they don't win more than half.
For our country, Urbania, we decided on power sharing over power dividing. So Urbania is a divided society with the different ethnic groups mostly divided onto the 5 different islands, and power sharing has been proven to work best for divided societies. We're also using the parliament system over the presidential system, and the power sharing favors the parliament system. In addition, for our electoral system, we are using proportional representation, and proportional representation protects the minorities and ensures that every vote is counted. And it has the minority veto, which further protects minority groups. We're also using the bicameral system, which further ensures that all of Urbania's population will be represented in the government. And we're using federalism, which is another good choice for divided societies. So overall, power sharing is best for Urbania because we have different ethnic groups, and it will allow all of the groups to be heard and to have a say in the government and for everyone's vote to be counted. And it will protect minority groups from being discounted or being boxed out by more powerful groups.
Okay, so now moving on to our justification for each institutional structure that we chose. First off, we chose a parliamentary form of government because presidentialism would be more difficult to adopt in Urbania right after war. Since the country is new and it needs the ability for many new laws to pass and, of course, to fix the laws that might fail in the future, parliamentarism is the best option because it provides this flexibility and adaptability. There are also no fixed terms in a parliamentary system, which is great because if a leader is unfit, him or her can be removed by the other chambers of government. Lastly, equal representation is very important, so war does not break out again. Presidentialism does not provide this as well as a parliamentary system does. And lastly, it also understands that the prime minister or president's point of view does not align with the entire population. And so this makes sure that the people agree with the laws that are passing and that the president or prime minister does not have total power. The reason as to why we chose federalism is because since we chose a parliamentary system, we want to ensure that although everyone has a say in those governmental decisions, that one power cannot take over the rest of them. There is proof from other countries around the world that federalism works good in divided societies. An example of this can be Germany, where there is also a large ethnic divide. And this country also has a history of many wars, and it looks like that federalism in this parliamentary country is working out well. So if we use that as an example, I think that it would work good for Urbania. And so in this case, we think that Urbania would work best as a federal parliamentary republic because there will be someone who has the most power, like a president or a prime minister, but also must rely on the lower houses of government to agree with him or her. So this creates a checks or balances system that is somewhat like the United States, however, also instituting the idea of a parliamentary system. So next we chose bicameralism. So again, this is the best option because of the checks and balances. The unicameral system is too flexible, so laws can almost pass too quickly and without time to think about how those would work in this society. So with a bicameral system, it's almost impossible to have the same political party running in both ruling in both chambers, meaning that there will mostly always be a balance of opinion. And in Urbania, there are currently 2 ethnicities which are dominant and then 2 that are minorities. And so with this bicameral system, it ensures that these minorities would be protected since they would be represented in government. And so lastly, for the PR system that we chose, as we've experienced in the United States, a 2-party system causes many problems since the population sometimes isn't represented very well. It's very complicated to have 2 parties that fit every single person's ideas and ideals. So of course, having a PR system would ensure that we could institute very many other parties. So again, Urbania is a deeply divided society where the groups have a history of fighting each other. So again, a 2-party system would just probably not be the best. So therefore, the PR system would be the most beneficial because everyone would have a say in government, including the minorities and the majorities, etc. And I know I've said this before, and I'm sure many other people in our presentation has as well, but it's the most important factor of the Constitution for us is in order to maintain peace, since the country has a history of not getting along very well. And finally, since there are so many parties to be a part of, there cannot be an overlap of ideas. So in a system with fewer parties, there is a major problem since they must appeal to basically the entire population, or at least half. So they must be a little bit more open-minded, which means that sometimes the parties overlap with each other. And instituting a PR system would mean that this would not have to happen.
Our group found consociationalism to be a better guideline for establishing democracy in a divided society. It is a form of government based on power sharing between elites from various social groups, which favors Urbania's parliamentary system. The consultation between these social communities is what leads to a sense of overall stability in communication, despite cultural barriers and differences. The localized power in decision-making also allows for growth and development from within. Not only does consociationalism regulate class conflict, which is essential to avoid violence and chaos, it also represents everyone on a political and economic level, protecting minorities and appealing to standard morals and ethics. The concept of proportional representation is incredibly important and ensures that the voices of the people are heard. Consociationalist governments also specialize in areas with diverse religious, ethnic, and racial segments, making it a guideline for divided societies such as Urbania.